I was really just kind of following like, okay, I want to do this and this is what I'm going to do next. And this seems fun. And it didn't occur to me that that would be a problem, that there would be bias or that there might be objection. But boy, you sure find it.
Hello again. Thank you for joining us on the Few Podcast. My name is Robert Schein with my co-host, Madison Evans. Hi, Madison.
Hi, Rob. How are you doing?
Good. It's great to be with you again. Today, I'm excited to announce a wonderful in-studio interview. And our episode today is going to be focusing on compassion and civic duty. And our guest today is Carolyn Martino, who is a very, very strong, independent, and very successful partner at a local law firm here in the Coachella Valley.
Yes, we're continuing the streak with great guests, and I'm excited to get to know Carolyn better.
Madison, you're going to love this episode. We're going to get to know her upbringing, what made her who she is today. And it's a great story. It actually is very engaging, and she's just an amazing person to listen to. So everyone's going to enjoy this, and I'm really excited to share that with everyone.
I'm excited. Let's welcome Carolyn in now.
I can't wait. Well, Carolyn, it's great to have you in the studio. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
As always, we start off with wanting to know who you are. Tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing.
Sure.
You know, how did you become who you are and such a dynamo today in every way?
I don't know about that so much. Dynamo, probably torturing people along the way a little bit, which probably comes from being the youngest of three kids, and I'm the baby and the only girl with two big brothers, and a Italian-American family on the East Coast, which holds, a nice position when you're the only girl and you're the youngest.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're very adorned too. As the baby girl?
Yeah, you get a lot of nice perks.
Okay.
It came with some other lessons too. When you have big brothers, you got to be tough because they weren't always going to take it easy on me.
Where in the East Coast?
In a small town in upstate New York.
Okay.
So I was born in Albany, New York, and at the time, my dad was finishing law school, so young family there. And when I was about a year old, they decided to make the trek to the suburbs.
Okay.
And so they were looking in the Albany area, which Albany is the capital of New York. It's about 2.5 hours from New York City.
Okay.
And we ended up in the suburbs in a small town outside Saratoga Springs.
Interesting.
Pretty.
Interesting. And how many years did you live there?
I was there until I started college. Okay. So I was there my entire childhood in the same house, in the same neighborhood. Like, I grew up with the kids that I went to nursery school with until we graduated high school.
So you have a very accomplished family. Let's talk about your parents.
Okay. So they're characters.
Okay.
And
I could see.
Yeah.
Just by talking to you.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And they were college sweethearts. And they went to a very small private college in Vermont called Middlebury College, which was a liberal arts school. And at the time they were there in the late 50s, it was very focused on American history, art history, pretty serious academic programs there. Like Robert Frost was in town and would lecture at the school. And so it was a place where they were very, very serious about their studies. And my parents actually came from extremely divergent backgrounds. So my mom is a Mayflower descendant. So
Is that right?
Yes. And we have gone back, I think it was her sister who did all the genealogy back to someone who fought in the Revolutionary War and someone who was on the Mayflower and signed the Mayflower Compact.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting.
All
all
very
that kind
interesting.
of very early American kind of interesting history.
Yeah.
And my dad is first generation Italian immigrant. So his parents born in Italy.
Awesome.
So you really couldn't have had a more divergent, he was Catholic and she was Protestant. And
Oh yeah, that's a big difference.
yeah,
then.
and for the families, it was a big it was a big, I think, learning lesson to kind of figure out the differences. And then what ultimately ended up happening, I think, for them was that where they had that delta of crossover was the importance of family.
Okay.
Like, even though my dad had grown up very poor in kind of what would be the projects in a small town in upstate New York as an immigrant family. And my grandfather sold insurance door to door, and they owned an Italian grocery store in the town. That the focus was really it centered on family.
Wow.
And that was also the same. That was kind of the one place that crossed over with my mom's family and kind of their dynamic, very proud of their heritage and very focused on the family. And my mother is one of 3 sisters, so you can probably relate. You have those 3 girls.
Yeah, 3 girls for sure.
And so, he was shepherding them in the world, but he had grown up difficult too. So I guess that's funny. I never even thought about that. There's kind of a shadow story. So my mother's mother was also from a kind of a family that was accomplished in Pittsburgh. And she ended up marrying my grandfather, whose father had died very young when the boys were all young. And he had 3 brothers, and they went on scholarship to a private school in Pittsburgh. And they ended up my grandparents met at the University of Pittsburgh in the 1930s.
Oh, that's crazy.
And funny little fact, my grandfather played in the Rose Bowl for the University of Pittsburgh in the 1930s.
Oh, that's fun.
I know, it's unique.
That is really cool.
So these funny 2 people who end up in this little town in Vermont, my parents kind of were this odd pairing that sort of worked.
Yeah, but they also had a heavy emphasis on education.
It was really the only thing that was what the conversation was about in our house. And I didn't know any different. So.
And your dad was an attorney?
He was also an attorney. Yeah. He was.
That's great. And he was pretty well known in a small community.
We were in this small town, and while he was in law school, he got connected with some folks and ended up working for Governor Rockefeller. And so he sort of had some political aspirations in upstate New York as a young man, and was involved with local politics and held some positions. And he was a town attorney for a long time there.
Was that part of the inspiration for you and your path?
I guess so. Like, I think about it now in hindsight, it sort of like looks like that. So he and I had a great relationship, very close. And I honestly thought it would sort of entertain him if I went to law school, because neither of my brothers chose that path. So they went on and did their own things. And my oldest brother is a surgeon, and my middle brother's a writer. And so I thought, oh, he'll like this. This will be cute. This will be fun. Wow. Cocktail party talk. And this will make him happy if I go off to law school. I wasn't even really thinking I would be a lawyer. I just thought that the education would be valuable in some endeavor. Wow. And that it would be helpful to know the rules. And when you know the rules, then you learn how to break them.
Oh, there you go.
The best way.
Yeah.
Which maybe as the youngest sibling.
I was going to say the youngest sibling, and going back to your personality and sort of how you got to
trying to get away with as much as I can.
Fly under the radar. I'm a younger sibling of, my older brother's 6 years older. And like you said, everything he did, I went to the same high school.
Yeah.
Followed the same path in college. He did finance marketing. I did financial marketing.
Oh, interesting.
He became a financial advisor. I became a financial advisor. So I sort of literally grew up in the industry. He would go to internship. I would be a tag along on his internship. Oh, and he would get paid and I wouldn't get paid, and I just loved it. And so, but yeah, I would always get into mischief, and parents would never know.
No. And also they sort of paved the way. There wasn't anything
they did pave the way
that I was going to do that they hadn't already tested the waters and sort of.
It's like driving in LA and you get the fast track.
Right.
Of life, right?
Right.
So you kind of get to pass everybody because you've already seen somebody do it. And, as a sibling, well, gosh, if my older brother can do it, why can't I? There's no fear.
And he also sort of broke my parents in for some of his antics.
Yeah.
And he was pretty lively too. So kind of out of the 3 of us, I always joke about this. So my middle brother is the really nice one. And his name's David, and he's the good one. I'm pretty sure he's my mom's favorite.
Yeah. There's always one, right?
Yeah, and everyone's favorite. They look identical. And, my older brother is a little more, I guess I would say this to his face, but he's kind of a little bit more of an asshole. And so am I a little bit.
He's going to watch this?
Maybe I'll send it to him.
Yeah.
We're the ones who are more likely to try to get our way.
There you go.
And my middle brother was the one who was sort of like, fine, have your way.
Making peace in the family.
Yeah, he's still to this day sort of remains in
Yeah,
that
one of my
role.
daughters is exactly like that. And she's sort of a peacekeeper and maker.
Well, I won't make you say if she's your favorite.
Well, yeah, we're not going to answer the question of who the favorite is. My wife and I have the saying, whoever we're getting along the best or listening to us, as any child that day that's listening to us or doing the right thing, that's our favorite child of the day.
Sure.
So that's how we keep it sort of PC in our household.
Oh yeah. Well, and then the kids, we all learn that, right? We know that, Gabe. We know how to make everyone happy.
Right.
So yeah, probably I did become a lawyer to piss my brothers off because I knew that
there you go.
my dad would like that more than what they did.
There it is. Well, there you have it right there.
Yeah, I win.
There you do win for sure. For sure.
If you're enjoying the podcast, we have a really exciting announcement. February 7th of 2025, we're having a one-day event at the Omni Rancho Las Palmas in Rancho Mirage, California. It's an amazing event centered around everything that we've talked about in the podcast, from female financial empowerment to wellness empowerment. Some of the guests that we've had on the podcast already will be at the summit, so it'll be a chance for you to see and hear from them again. You can purchase tickets at cw3confidencesummit.com, and we hope to see you there. And back to the podcast.
Well, highly educated, very, family oriented, and the family also back east and now sort of that your path, on the path of having a passion for social justice.
I in preparing for this, I never really thought about it in that construct, but I guess so, sort of accidentally. That really just was what was important. And we had pretty lively conversations at the dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
And, as an attorney and the town attorney, we heard a lot of opening and closing arguments.
Oh, I bet.
And so, kind of learning what an advocate is and what these issues are and how he would express himself. And he went on later to become a professor, and he was the head of the business law department at a small Catholic school in upstate New York.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I have probably had a longer law career now than he ever did practicing law, because he sort of would evolve and pivot from his interests. After my parents got married, he started out as a journalist and a writer. They lived in Newport, Rhode Island, and he wrote for a newspaper there, the Providence Journal, and covered the Newport Jazz Festival and all these
He's a Renaissance man.
These big sexy things happening. Yeah. And then I think decided maybe he wanted to venture back to closer to home, which for him was upstate New York, where my extended Italian American family is. And that was why he ended up in law school, and kind of then from there ended up working in government and pursued some political aspirations, really to try, I think, and promote these ideals of equity. And, having been a first generation immigrant, Italian Americans faced a lot of scrutiny also at that time. And he went into the Navy at a young age. He went straight from high school at 17 into the Navy. And so he was an older student in college. By the time he started school, he was already 4 or 5 years older than the incoming kids.
Yeah.
And he started out and went to Columbia University straight out of the Navy. But his best friend from home was studying at this small college in Vermont, kind of goaded him and said, "No, come on up here. The chicks are hot.
Yeah.
We got all these pretty blonde girls."
And before he could hang up the phone, he was there.
Yeah. And so, the two of them were Navy veterans.
Okay.
And so I think they pretty quickly took over the frat house that they were in and the shenanigans that they were getting up to. And, somewhere along the way we're, meeting Robert Frost and learning about
that's incredible.
American history and American literature. And that was kind of his lane. It stayed with him, I think, that interest in always learning. I mean, he was always with a book in his hand and always kind of studying and figuring out the meaning of life, I think, was always my sense of it as a kid.
Did he have a lot of conversations with you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. With all of us, really. Yeah. That was...
So that means that you were listening as a kid. Because I'm still trying to, with my, college age daughters, and especially my teenage son.
Sure.
Oh man. It's just trying to, that they're present. You don't know if they're mentally present or they're just trying to appease you.
Sure.
To say, how long is dad going to basically be talking about this because we have something better to do, right?
Right.
So I always wonder that as a father, but it's good to hear that you were, you absorbed that and you appreciated that time.
Yeah, we did. And we did joke about it because he had a lot of funny tics. And we knew that when he said, okay, he'd pick one or two of us out and be like, okay, we're going on a Saturday or Sunday morning. And if you said, where are you going? You didn't get an answer. Mm-hmm. He was just like, let's go. And one of the first stops might be at the Italian deli, and he would get what we called Roma diplomas. So the Italian deli was called Roma's. And your Roma diploma at about 6 or 7 in the morning before you were going to get on a road trip on a windy back road would be like a stick of pepperoni. And it was wrapped like that. Mm-hmm. So we'd call it our Roma diploma. And that doesn't sit that well on those windy roads.
No.
Of New England.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he thought that was a good idea.
Well, it was anchor in the future, though. He was like a diploma or education and, having that sort of vision for the future. Well, that's fantastic. And thanks for sharing the history. I too came from my dad came over through Ellis Island, 1953. He was half, basically Yugoslavian, but today's Croatia.
Sure.
Okay. And my mom's half Italian from New York. And they met in New York.
Congratulations. So, I did not know you were Italian.
I
liked you.
Yeah, last name's Catalona. So a very Italian mom.
Oh, there you go.
So we were very loud. And, when I first met my wife, Jenica, and I brought her home for the first time, and she's this, freshman.
Gorgeous blonde.
Yeah, skinny little blonde thing from California. We take her, and my mom makes every Italian dish you could ever think of.
Right.
And I'm sitting there saying, you better finish. And she's like, I can't eat anymore. And I said, you better. You're now slapping my mom in the face.
Right.
Like, you don't understand that. And she's like, on the ride back, she's like, why is it so loud? I'm like, what do you mean?
Right.
It's like, that's just how we are.
Sure.
That's who we are.
Yeah.
So I can definitely relate with, and then my mom was very strong, right? She was very, independent and strong, in her own right. So that was my influence as well as my dad. But my dad, who came over in this country, he basically said we came for 2 reasons. One was for the opportunity, and for 2 was the education.
Right.
And he goes, we'll provide you the education, and it's your job to figure out what you're going to do with the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you grow up with an immigrant family who cherishes everything and know what it's like to sacrifice to get here, and then to see that on the kitchen table and see the parents sacrifice,
right,
you have a different perspective of life.
That's so true. And the other thing that rings true about that and that kind of immigrant was the one thing I just remember being such a strong piece was how much my dad loved America and kind of the ideals and the freedoms and that you really can do whatever you want to do. And coming from somewhere where they didn't have those same abilities to have opportunity.
Yeah, you and I both share that. We saw that from our parents, and we took advantage of that. We took advantage of the education, and we took advantage of the opportunity because we had that sort of that fire within. I always call it the kitchen table and the sort of family dynamic.
Right.
We just hope that the younger generations continue to carry that torch or see that opportunity, and don't waste it, right? And don't sort of just squander it away with the world that
and
we're
to
in.
love it, like to really really authentically like. And that was the other thing is that how my dad kind of got us to listen and do stuff was like he was very exciting. Like you just never really knew what was going to go down.
Oh, that's cool. And
so, when these adventures would start out, like get in the car, like you didn't really know. You could end up in a nightclub. We could end up. He was very good with a racing form. I have been to the OTB in Chinatown.
Oh, there you go.
I can read a racing form. And
how exciting is that?
I actually worked at the racetrack when I was young. That was one of my first jobs I ever had.
Is that right?
It is. And Saratoga, New York is the home of the oldest racetrack in the country.
Oh, wow. The history there, too.
Yeah, it was fun. And if you needed a lawyer in the month of August, you should go to the racetrack because all the lawyers were there.
Is that a thing?
It is.
Oh, that's so funny.
And there were no lawyers working. They were.
Oh, that's see. Now I'm learning some history here. This is really cool. Really cool. Well, Carolyn, why don't we fast forward? So, how did you leave the East Coast? How did you get to the West Coast?
I think it's that kernel of adventure, and when you grow up in that cold, cold climate. So we had snow from Halloween to Easter in upstate New York.
That would be a rough one.
It was hard, and one of the first things I noticed coming to California was the difference in Halloween costumes, because your Halloween costume better have like a really warm fur coat with it, because it could be snowing. And in California, I was like, what are these people doing? And like, you could basically go out in your costume in like a swimsuit. Like that wasn't going to happen.
Not at all.
So I had this kind of idea. I got this notion, we're talking about the influence of our older siblings. And so I had these two older brothers who were kind of on their path. And as I was getting ready to apply to college, my oldest brother was in medical school. And he did a rotation in Southern California and worked with a doctor there in a hospital and I think in orthopedics. And so he came home to New York with tales of, the sunshine. And
Oh, that's
beaches.
crazy.
And that seemed like a great idea.
You're like sold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got kind of adventurous, and I was applying to colleges, and I wasn't totally forthright with my parents about exactly where. So I applied to the places they wanted, and I applied to UCLA. And it was an outlier. And when I got in there, I really wanted to go.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so we had to talk about it, and they really did not want me to go.
Yeah, not at all.
No. So my brothers had gone to college, a 2 or 3 hour drive. And that's another funny thing about being here is when you're in that little pocket of New England, you can really throw a stone. And some of the oldest colleges and institutions and places are all located in a small area. Like even in the little place we grew up was Skidmore College and Union College and RPI and some, pretty cool schools. And so for my parents thinking, why are you going to go to California, kid? 3,000 miles away on a plane? You can't do that. And I was adventurous, and I was like, I'm doing it.
That is truly adventurous. That's a testament to who you are.
Well, we have all these pioneers, and I figured I'm going to conquer the West.
Yeah.
And I got here and I loved it. And I have loved it from the time I arrived to now.
So you attended UCLA.
I did.
How'd you like UCLA?
I loved it. I thought it was the most magical, greatest
And
place
did you
on
know
earth.
when you were a freshman at UCLA, you wanted to get, what was your future? Did you know what you wanted?
I really didn't. And I was, I started out as a fine arts major.
Okay.
So my dad had this really strong influence in American history and American literature, and my mom was a painter. So she was a fine arts major in college. And so I had kind of grown up with that too, and I really liked that, and that had been something that was an interest of mine in high school. And I started as a fine arts major, and UCLA had pretty significant painters there at the time teaching, which was very cool. But they weren't really teaching. They were kind of more doing their own work.
Okay.
And as much as I liked that, I kind of found a different path, and I ended up in art history. And so I got this completely useless degree in art history, which you can't really do too much with it.
Well, you can go back to the Louvre and travel the world.
You can.
And have some fun there for sure.
You can, but I had this idea of, okay, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to have to be able to generate self-supporting income to live life. And so I had this practical side to it. But while I was in college, I was very not practical. Then at that time, you're just kind of learning who you are and figuring it all out.
And did you love California from day one?
Oh, yeah, from the time I got off of the plane. The first place I got taken, so my California boyfriend picked me up from the airport, and I think he had a plan on making this like the best experience to make sure it was sold.
Yeah.
So the first place we went was Gladstone's, which is a fun little place right on PCH at the end of Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
The waves are crashing, and they throw peanut shells on the floor, and they're serving fresh fish.
That's it.
It was really fun.
That's it. Yeah, that's all you need to know.
I still am not used to seeing palm trees.
Yeah, is it?
I remember getting
fun for
off.
you?
Yeah, I remember getting off the plane thinking, "Whoa, these are a lot of palm trees. Is this real?"
Yeah. Well, speaking of palm trees, here in the Coachella Valley and in Palm Springs and now Indian Wells. And what brought you from there to here?
Yeah, that is an interesting story. So from spending all that time in LA and I finished undergrad and I had some choices and I figured, well, I better end up in grad school. I picked law school because it was 3 years and I figured, okay, if I'm in law school for 3 years, I don't have to work. And the pursuing art history grad school was 2 years and I wasn't sure where that would end up. So I worked in Los Angeles for a long time and really had a great time there. I loved LA and the lifestyle there. I was a total beach girl.
Yeah.
I loved to go up to Zuma and go up the coast. And my dad passed unexpectedly in the late 90s. And so my mom decided she was not going to stay in the cold weather. So she relocated, and they had always sort of had a plan to relocate to the Coachella Valley. So of all their funny interests and things,
Is that right? Wow.
yeah, my dad was an avid golfer. So they would come and vacation here and try the golf courses out. And so they were going to kind of settle here. So she decided, well, I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay.
Once he passed, she thought, I'm not going to stay in this icy cold weather.
Well, that's crazy.
So as she was kind of getting settled here, I would visit and spend time with her. And at a certain point, I think she thought, we better find you something more serious to do. And so I think she knew, I was sort of having fun in LA. And I think she thought, let me get this kid a little more settled down. So she sort of lured me out here. And I got introduced to a lawyer who
And
was...
you're still in, are you still in?
I was a lawyer by then.
Okay.
Yeah, I had gotten through it all fast.
Okay.
I was young for my age, so I got done with college fast. I went straight into law school. By the time I was 25, I was past the bar, practicing law.
That's awesome.
I'd moved across the country, and I was kind of like, what's next?
Oh, wow.
But LA had all the panoply of things that were next. And so I was there for probably I was practicing law probably about 5 to 7 years. And I think she was saying, okay, we're going to have to get you figuring this out.
And she lured you here.
So she lured me, and she's tricky too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's still here.
Awesome.
And, she does love to take credit for the fact that I'm here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I started coming to visit. I didn't take the plunge quickly, and I still have a 310 phone number.
Yeah. You always keep that.
Yeah. And so I was kind of dipping my toe in, and then it really lures you, the Coachella Valley. Like, it's a very seductive place.
Yeah. We love, traveling as a family and traveling the world. And I love taking my kids back to, we did Croatia, we did Italy, so
Beautiful.
So go see where we're from. And those are
People
beautiful
don't know
places.
that. Croatia's beautiful beaches.
It is amazing. And, but then as you travel the world, you go through, Spain and France and everywhere. You also see your eyes open up to, yes, the U.S. is new. And then you come back to the Coachella Valley and you have palm trees and it's paradise.
It really is. I mean, it doesn't. We just had the holidays here. Like, why would you leave over the holidays?
Right.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it was
beautiful. My cousins are in New York. They're like 6 feet of snow and storms, and your flights can't leave.
Knock on wood, we've got it. We got the light. Well, what I always say is we've earned the sunshine tax.
Sure.
Because we have to pay for 120 degrees in the summer.
We do, but when you grow up and you have to stay inside for many months of the
Right.
year because
the
it's so
opposite.
cold.
See, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh,
So I'm not too far away.
That.
So I've always grown up in the sun and palm trees and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I'm happy to not have to scrape the ice off my windshield, and
I could only imagine that.
it's fun to grow up in the snow. It really is. We could
You pray for snow days.
Yeah, we could snowmobile down my street, and I grew up in this pretty new subdivision. We have so much new construction out here. In a way, this area reminds me of where I grew up.
Okay.
Because when, by the time we got up to upstate where the suburbs were, they were kind of just building and developing. And so we saw the houses come up. We moved in and there was nothing behind where we lived except forest and woods. Basically you walk outside and you're on an adventure with like abandoned farms and equipment and cars and all kinds of stuff that you can get into.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was fun. But not so livable in that weather, really as a practical matter.
Everything's indoors.
It's hard. Driving
For
is
sure.
driving is scary in the snow and the ice. So yeah, we kind of have it made here.
Yeah, we do.
People are figuring it out. It's not a secret
Oh,
anymore.
they are. So let's talk about your career.
Sure.
What's your area of focus?
I am a family law lawyer. So I handle primarily divorce, custody and visitation issues. That's my sole practice field. I do a little bit of crossover into estates, trust and estate work, and sometimes probate litigation.
Okay.
And, I didn't start out in family law. I started out as a litigator in LA, working in, kind of traditional law firms, which was a great experience to sort of just learn in a practical way, kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
So our series is also about strong, empowered women.
Sure.
Like yourself. How did you find yourself in a male-dominated industry, if you will, when you started breaking in and I know we talked with Valerie, your partner, earlier,
Sure.
and she also described if you're in LA, it's different than if you're here in the Coachella Valley. Coachella Valley is sort of more of an even, if you will, accommodating, if you will. I don't even know if that's the word to
Sure.
use, but but you definitely broke into a male-dominated industry. How was that for the first time? Did you have gender blindness because you were raised the way you were and you had older brothers and you're like, this is who I am? And
Kind of, in
Yeah.
a way, and thinking about it that way. And in hindsight, really, it's not until you sort of look back and reflect on certain things that happened where I realized, oh, I really was kind of just crashing through and not intentionally. I was really just kind of following like, okay, I want to do this and this is what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
And this seems fun. And it didn't occur to me that that would be a problem, that there would be bias or that there might be objection. But boy, you sure find it.
Mm-hmm.
It sneaks up on you. I had a funny thing happen. So I went to Loyola Law School in downtown LA
Okay.
in the early 90s. And I don't know if it's the same now, but at that time, big law firms would recruit second-year law students in the second-year summer between second and third year of law school. It was like a big time to get recruited to a law firm for your employment after school.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't super serious about it, but I went through all the interviews and I got interviewed by a firm in Santa Monica and I had to put a resume together. I mean, I'm all of like 22. Like, what do you put on your resume, right?
Right.
So I had worked at the racetrack. So the Saratoga racetrack was on my resume. So I'm getting interviewed by the managing partner of this firm. The only thing he cared about was
Yeah, he wants to know the story.
the racetrack. And he liked to bet horses. That was our whole conversation. And
That's cool.
I had classmates who were much more dedicated students than I was, who got overlooked. And so I kind of landed this second year summer, and I still think it was largely based upon
Isn't that incredible?
conversation.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I didn't know enough to know that had been a really lucky thing that happened to me. So typical Carolyn, I'm cruising into my second year summer job, and they had put their law firm in a brand new building in Santa Monica called the Water Garden. And so the underground parking wasn't totally developed and done yet. So I pull in, I'm a little bit late getting to my job and I don't want to, be noticed coming in late. So I park as close as I can to the elevators and I get upstairs and I think I've made it. Like, I think I'm good. So this law firm was 5 floors of this new building. And across the loudspeaker of all 5 floors, I was summoned to the HR department.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, uh-oh, okay, what's happening?
Oh, gosh.
And so I get there and they're like, where did you park?
Uh-oh.
I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean where I park? I just parked
That's not the spot.
next to the elevator. And they're like, well, you parked, I won't say his name, you parked in so-and-so's parking space. He was like a big partner.
Yeah, yeah.
And he is pissed.
Uh-huh.
You better show up to his office.
Not only were you late, but you made a huge statement.
Who knew?
Who knew?
So here's this young kid. I'm not even a lawyer. And so
Oh, gosh.
I have to go and I have to now mea culpa to this partner. And they're like, you better go up there, move your car and go up and apologize. I'm like, okay. So I go up and, this gentleman was really mad. And it struck me in a way like, buddy, if your sole level of importance in your life is where you park, like I couldn't wrap my brain around it. And I probably was not sufficiently deferential given what I was really kind of thinking was like, who cares?
Right.
But I learned like there's a hierarchy, there's a pecking order, and this guy thinks it's really important. And this young woman who has come and taken his space is not going to fly. And I remember thinking, okay, this is a thing now. Like that didn't even process for me. So I learned pretty quickly coming in at that point. And, you look around the room and you don't realize it until you're sitting in the room of all the managing partners of the law firm and there are no other women. Yeah. That's where it kind of started to strike me a little bit. And, being a baby sister, I immediately pivoted to how am I going to make this work? Yeah. And there are advantages. Men and women are different and that's okay. And we all have our strengths. Yeah. And I figured, okay, so let them be good at what they're good at. And let me find a lane. What can I be good at that helps move whatever this machine is?
Perfect.
So you just kind of learn.
Yeah.
You're learning on the job.
Well, that's fantastic. And
I pissed that partner off the entire time I was there.
Yeah, I bet you did. That's the best.
I guess.
Yeah. No, that's just you're a button pusher. You're gonna push the buttons.
It made my life harder, but I didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's because you had, your upbringing, your older brothers too. Like, all right, if you're gonna push me, I'm gonna push you back. And that's fun.
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah, that was kind of the game.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't even an engagement until you made an engagement, and then now it's on. Let's stand up.
Yeah, let's go.
That's good.
So I had some funny things like that. I also had a really weird interview with the owner of the Clippers.
Okay.
And he asked me open questions. Are you married? Are you going to have kids? What's your religion? Like, I didn't know at the time.
All those questions you cannot ask.
And at 25, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can't ask that. Things didn't end up that great for him, ultimately,
right.
in his career. But, that was a really interesting, when you get asked those questions and you realize your male counterpart is not getting asked, are you going to get married and have kids? Because we're worried you're going to leave the workplace after we train you. So those kinds of things. And, I guess you kind of learn to navigate it and you learn to maybe sidestep. And, we code switch, right? We talk how we know someone wants us to hear. Mm-hmm. And if that's successful for you and that's what you have to do to get there, that's great. It's nice now to be able to be a little more straightforward. I feel a little stronger in my shoes now where I am not so eager to code switch and sort of just go along and speak up a little. It's why I think things like this kind of podcast are so important, where you have the opportunity to hear, how do you navigate it? Because when young women are coming up, you don't know, there's not a real rule book and you don't know who you're going to run up against. So, you kind of get thrown into these situations. I didn't get that job, by the way, at the Clippers. I just like sports. I thought it would be fun to be in-house counsel for a basketball team.
Yeah. It sounds like a dream job, but it doesn't sound like a person you want to work for.
Didn't know it then, but found it out.
Right.
Thank you everyone for watching. This episode is sponsored by Schein Wealth Management. We've been in the Coachella Valley for 40 years and we're built for the next 40 years. You can find us at BlankySheinWealthManagement.com. And now back to the episode.
All right, Carolyn, we just talked about you becoming comfortable in your own shoes and sort of feeling that strength that you have. And it's part of an experience too. And back in the day, you didn't know what you didn't know, but you didn't care to knock on that door or kick right through it. And that still is what makes you very successful and strong today. Talk about those experiences that you've encountered.
Yeah, it's definitely an evolution. And you go along not really sure if what you're doing is okay or the right way. And so you kind of just dive into the deep end and see what happens. I was very fortunate and ended up out in the desert working. And it's true, the desert community out here has a little bit less pressure than being in a more metropolitan area like Los Angeles. So starting out there, it was less personal. Mm-hmm. And so in a smaller community, and I don't know if you find that also in wealth management and as a financial advisor, the legal community here really looks out for its own. And there were a few very talented, significant female lawyers out here in the desert. And they probably have really interesting stories to tell about their come up. And unbeknownst to me, I think they probably got it that this younger female attorney was here. And so I had some amazing support from some female mentors that was wonderful.
Oh, fantastic.
And it kind of just gave me the feeling like, you can do this.
Yeah.
Like, people do this, and be brave and just try it. And what's the worst thing that can happen? Because we really learn from the places where we make mistakes, right? Where you step in it, that's going to really stick with you.
Yeah.
And I tell this to my kid too all the time. I'm like, it's not about falling down. You're going to. It's about how you get back up. You can get down. Don't stay down. And my dad has a colorful expression, which is, kid, it's okay if you step in shit, don't stand in it.
Awesome.
And
So true.
Yeah. And so, it's a lot of trial and error. And you look for the people. You look for guidepost people that can kind of give you that one piece of the puzzle that you put together. And if I had a common thread for my path, which has been a little bit unusual in terms of my law career, it was that I would follow a person who I thought had something valuable to teach me. Because I didn't love that big firm experience where the guy cared about his parking space. Like, that really was not that didn't resonate with me. That wasn't going to get me up in the morning and try to work hard and do a good job at anything. And that big firm experience is great for some people. It didn't click with me. Like, I needed to connect with people. I think it's how I ended up as a family law lawyer, because it's really people oriented. If you're representing the Coca-Cola Corporation or Chevron or one of these big companies, like, you don't have a human. But people who are getting divorced are going through probably the worst time in their life. And they need a counselor. They need somebody who is going to kind of help guide. So I sort of found a community of people here in the desert, and in particular, some very strong female role models.
That's fantastic.
Who I watched sort of have a career and have a family and do all those things. And, you kind of, if you're fortunate enough to pick up a person along the way that can kind of believe in you, or that has a kernel of something that you relate to. And that has been females and males throughout my career, that you can learn from. I had a very good friend of mine, and I worked at his company, and his dad was a lawyer, and his dad had been a pretty influential attorney in LA, and he was involved in, remember with the crash of the, God, what was it? It was like right in the 90s, and there was private lending, and they were trying to do a bailout, and they crashed.
Long-term capital.
Yeah, they crashed the banks. And so he was trying to
Workouts.
restructure all of that. And so he kept his office next to where our office was. And so he was someone who I learned a lot from. Here was this older lawyer gentleman who, was working on the bailouts of one of our national crises. And it was really interesting to watch him. And one of the threads of these people that have had influence in my life is how gracious they are. And some of the most successful, most talented, most special people that I've had the blessing of having in my world as a kind of a mentor, their quality is of this graciousness and humility, who really are willing to step down and don't take themselves quite so seriously as the poor lawyer who needed his parking space vacant when he arrived at work.
Right.
So, you find the people and you see what fits. Try stuff on and see if it passes the gut check.
Yeah.
And I teach that to my kid now, you try it on and see how it feels. See if this feels like this is who you are.
Yeah.
And, you're kind of finding your way. And the Valley is a very fortunate place that is tolerant of that. So I grew up on the East Coast where there's this sort of savage intensity for academics and
very intense.
Yeah. And when you're from there and you meet people and you're making friends, one of the first questions that you get asked is, where'd you go to college? where'd your parents go to college?
Right.
That's kind of the questions. When I came to California, that was different. That was no longer kind of the lead question. And so I've grown to appreciate that all that intensity out in California gets kind of translated to a more creative place where there's a little more freedom. And, candidly, I have found as a female that the West Coast is more tolerant and open.
Yeah.
And I haven't worked on the East Coast, so I don't want to, comment on that. But I do find that because there is this kind of pioneering spirit here,
Mm-hmm.
the people who found their way to California fought to get here.
Yeah.
And they're much more open to these new ideas. It's like this new frontier, which anything's possible.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
true.
it's been fun, and you kind of have to follow your path. And the one thing I guess from both my mom and my dad, and the kind of the long path in our families of the importance of education and raising children and family is, you ultimately it has to be authentic. Like if you don't really believe in it, it's not going to work.
Absolutely true. And as kids or even your children, they can sniff that out a mile away.
Sure.
Right. And growing up, I've always had a lot of jobs, a lot of internships. And I always said, you're going to learn two things from somebody you work for,
Right.
or a place of business that you first start out on and you work your way up. It's either who you want to become later on, like what are the great attributes
Right.
and qualities and skill set that
Right.
you can learn,
Right.
or what not to do.
Sure.
We also say that as parents, like
Right.
to our children, say, hey, listen, we're not perfect. And your mom and I are going to do some things that you as kids, when you grow up and you go on your way, you're going to want to change,
Right.
just like we did with our parents. But there's also, hopefully there's going to be some great qualities and values and redeeming structure that you're like, I want to model and emulate that growing
Right.
up. But it's a 50-50. You can, figure it out what you're going to take and thrive from and
evolve.
what you're going to, what you want to change.
Yeah, and you can move through your life and pivot, and I do feel more comfortable now in my own skin because I don't feel as judged because I maybe don't care
Right.
as much anymore
Right.
about whether that is what so and so thinks I should be doing or shouldn't be doing, and that kind of pressure I think is heavy for all of our kids on what the expectation is.
Yeah.
And, you really have to be strong enough to just say, okay, that's an expectation. Does it fit me or not? Will that work? And if that one I want to put back on the shelf, we'll leave that for someone else. I don't need that one. And it's okay to pivot. It's okay to, change it up.
That's
You can always
awesome.
do something different if you don't like it.
Well, I want to thank you for raising such a great son because our boys were together this season playing football, and my son looked up to your son, and he was always a great, not only role model, but took him under his wing, and that's a testament to who you are too. So,
Well, that's very kind. That's my favorite subject, of course, as an Italian mom. And, he's the singleton. So he's the one prince,
yeah,
the heir.
very cool.
And so that's kind. We love that feedback always. And yes, he told me many kind things about Jack and what a great kid he is too. And they're doing a good job over there at the school, I think, kind of
Yeah,
letting the students have some leadership roles because they will just learn more from their peers. They're never going to listen to you and me.
not at all.
That's for sure.
Not at all. Yeah, it's always good when we have the Lord of the Flies over there.
Yeah, the inmates running the asylum.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's good. Well, Carolyn, thank you for coming in today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Learned so much. We got a lot of, history together, I think, in terms of commonality.
Sure.
And so now I get to know you a lot better. And like you said, in the Coachella Valley, in the small town that we're in, it's one degree of who you know. And what I say in my 7 keys is like, it's all about the network of support,
Right.
right? You never know when you're going to need each other and a phone call away, but I appreciate your friendship and also who you are in the community and what a great dynamo, like I said before, you are in your law firm as well, and a great leader.
Well, I so appreciate that, Rob. Thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you for inviting me here today.
Awesome.
Sometimes you have to get invited or you don't know.
Yeah. Just have some fun. So
Thank
thank
you
you for
so
doing
much.
it. Yeah. Wow, Madison, that was a fantastic interview. Carolyn has a great background.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot personally, as well as her professional journey. But it started with growing up in a strong family. She had older brothers, and that really toughened her up, but also
I'm
had the
sure.
opportunity to make her sort of see that path before her of like, well, if they can do it, why can't I? And so that was not only sort of the weave of her career, but awesome who she is.
Caroline was great, and it was so awesome to learn more about her upbringing and how she got into her career and just the nitty-gritty of what she does.
That was amazing.
And ending this episode like we do with all episodes, I'm going to read some quotes, starting with Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and her quote is, "The power I exert on the court depends on the power of my arguments, not my gender." And this quote's by Coco Chanel. "A girl should be two things, who and what she wants." And by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, "Real change, enduring change happens one step at a time."
Madison, as always, thanks for the quotes. Very inspirational. We want them to be inspirational to the community. And I'm really excited for the next episode. We have my daughters, all three Schein girls, Taylor, Brooke, and Ashley, in studio. It's hard to get them all in one place at the same time.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I think we're getting a lot of great information, and it's going to be a very dynamic and loud episode. Just get out of the way because it's going to be crazy. So I'm excited to share this with you, and let's all tune into the next episode. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you again next time.
This podcast is brought to you by David Field Producer. It is produced and directed by David Field and Kristen George. And it's mix, edit, and socials by Kristen George. Blanky Schein Wealth Management is a group of investment professionals registered with Hightower Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with Hightower Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. No investment process is free of risk, and there is no guarantee that the investment process or the investment opportunities referenced herein will be profitable. Past performance is not indicative of current or future performance and is not a guarantee. The investment opportunities referenced herein may not be suitable for all investors. All data and information referenced herein are from sources believed to be reliable. Any opinions, news, research, analysis, prices, or other information contained in this research is provided as general market commentary. It does not constitute investment advice. Blanky Schein Wealth Management and Hightower shall not in any way be liable for claims and make no expressed or implied representations or warranties as to the accuracy or completeness of the data and other information, or for statements or errors contained in or omissions from the obtained data and information referenced herein. The data and information are provided as of the date referenced. Such data and information are subject to change without notice. This document was created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of Blanky Schein Wealth Management and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC, or any of its affiliates.